Hi, I'm Droolbatz. It's so nice to see you. Today I'm going to be reviewing the 2006 horror film All the Boys Love Mandy Lane. I'm going to be discussing it based on its premise, its production value and artistic choices, and finally, how it stands apart from or blends into other films of the genre. I hope you enjoy. Texas high schooler Mandy Lane shows up on the first day of junior year, having had a growth spurt over the summer. She is suddenly tall, curvaceous, and super beautiful, and all the boys who had previously ignored her suddenly have a huge crush on her and want to kiss her. Some of the rich boys invite her to this pool party that they're having at their house. She says she'll go, but only if her friend Emmett, who's kind of a loser, is invited, and they say fine reluctantly. After one of the rich and popular guys tries to jokingly drown Emmett in the pool, Emmett goes to sit up on the roof. One of the guys goes up on the roof to apologize for it or something, and Emmett jokingly tells him that everybody's after Mandy, so the only way to impress her is to do something outrageous. So the guy tries to jump off the roof into the pool, but he's super drunk and hits his head on the concrete and basically dies. And it's terrible. All the popular kids blame Emmett for his death and completely ostracize him now even more than ever before. By the end of junior year, it seems like Mandy has put some distance between herself and Emmett, and she's been hanging out a little bit more with these popular girls. The whole year, the boys have all been crushing on Mandy, and she's kind of been ignoring all of them, and they're determined that one of them is going to get a kiss from her, or maybe something more. So one of them invites Mandy out to this Texas cattle ranch that his parents own. They're going to be away for the weekend, and just says, hey, everybody, let's go to my parents' place for the weekend and just have a good time. I meet this cowhand who's out there, a former Marine. He's not super thrilled that the kids are going to be out there drinking and skinny dipping and doing shenanigans, but it's his employer's son, so he can't really raise a fit unless they start destroying stuff. So he's like, whatever, just be on good behavior. However, the first day that they are there, people start going missing. All the Boys Love Mandy Lane is a pensive, moody, and somewhat slow burn slasher flick. Kind of an interesting combo. I could see where the movie might get a little bit boring if it were too much longer, but at exactly 90 minutes, it's a satisfying length that really pulls you in without drowning you in the world building that they have created with this film. The acting was good. The only actor really worth noting, in my opinion, is Amber Heard, who plays Mandy Lane. The character Mandy Lane is kind of a complex, mysterious character that I found very intriguing. I thought Amber Heard really conveyed that mystery and that mystique and the vagueness in a really excellent way. This movie was a really visual treat. It took a lot of notes from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre as far as shot composition. There were a lot of slow panning shots with a lot of sun flares like that. And the movie also had a lot of just kind of like slow, wobbly frames that lingered on the characters in a lot of ways. A lot of shots were close up, far away, from above, from below, so visually it didn't get stagnant at all. There was a really interesting grain to all of the footage, every scene, and a lot of the scenes had a really interesting filter on them that kind of gave the movie like an older school feel. Not like a movie from 2006, but more like a movie from like the late 80s or early 90s, perhaps. As a result, the movie was a little bit hard to place what time period the kids were in. They did have cell phones, but like only one of them even mentioned having it, and it's easy to imagine that this movie could have taken place any time from 2006 all the way back to the 70s or something. It gave the movie a timeless and mysterious feel. This movie eschewed traditional horror movie sound techniques and instead actually had an absence of these usual sound effects. Rather, the movie used soundtrack type songs at the beginning of different scenes or to signify a change in perspective of the characters. But a lot of the scary scenes actually didn't have any background music at all, relying on the silence or on simply the sounds going on in the actual scene to convey what was going on. It gave the movie a really interesting feel and really added to the dark and alluring atmosphere that this movie presented. As a result, the movie had kind of this underlying tone of sadness and stillness even when some extreme stuff was going on. Now I'm going to discuss how this movie stands apart from or blends into other films of the genre. I will be spoiling this movie, so I recommend that if you don't want spoilers, you head on out of here and see the movie for yourself. Thank you for those who are sticking around. People are going missing one by one. This mysterious person in a dark hoodie is killing people with a shotgun, killing them with a hammer, killing them with all sorts of things. As they're trying to escape, more and more characters are killed. The cowhand, who is armed, tries to help them escape, but he is shot. Mandy has to run out to his little apartment and try to find his keys to his Jeep so that they can escape. The dark figure is hunting down the remaining characters. They've been running all through the night, and finally it's daytime now, the daylight. Mandy picks up the keys in the apartment and a knife, like she's going after the guy if he comes at her, and as she steps out, the guy in the hood is chasing her friend in a car. The girl goes, "Mandy, Mandy, help me, Mandy!" And Mandy drops the keys in the med pack and like holds out her arms like, "I've got you." But when the girl runs up, Mandy stabs her with the knife. What? The guy gets out of the car and it's Emmett. Yup, her friend, and you realize Mandy has been in on this the entire time. Once the girl dies, Emmett hands Mandy this book and says, "I've got it all documented here for the police and the fan clubs, etc., implying that they had this plan to get famous from killing people. Mandy and he lay down in the field like they're going to take pills and commit suicide, but all of a sudden, Garth shows up, the cowhand. Even though he's injured, he tries to fight Emmett. Emmett starts wailing on him, and Mandy screams, suddenly going back into her act of not knowing who this guy is, and starts attacking Emmett to keep up her persona. Emmett gets really angry that she turns on him and starts chasing her. Mandy falls down in this giant mud pit with a bunch of dead cows in it, and Emmett falls in soon. They have this fight in the mud. She picks up this giant railroad tie that is like insanely heavy for someone her size to be carrying, but whatever, and starts beating him with this inhuman strength. She escapes and takes Garth in the Jeep to safety, and he says, "You saved us," and she gives us a mysterious look. What are her plans for Garth? We don't know. So obviously this movie had a plot twist that was kind of interesting. I think it had a couple of plot twists depending on what you knew or did not know going into this movie. The concept of kids going out into the wilderness and getting hunted down is not a new one, and the whole "one of us is in on it" is not new either. I think what made this movie stand out more was the visual element of this movie. The creators of this film did say that it was heavily inspired by the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and I think it really worked to create a really atmospheric movie. A lot of slasher movies don't give me very strong world building. They just feel like a movie. This movie kind of felt like a world of its own. It had an underlying stillness to it, and Mandy Lane's unreadable character created this just really interesting air of mystery. The whole concept of a bunch of boys after a girl or a bunch of girls after one boy in a school setting is very common in a lot of teen shows, especially anime and manga, so that'll feel familiar to people, but this movie was still unique, especially in the atmosphere that it created. The specialties of this movie were completely based in the characters. Some of the filters in this movie reminded me of a couple of scenes in this old TV show that I liked that got canceled after a season called The Secret Circle. I think there were a couple of other movies from the late 2000s or the early 2000 teens that use this filter a lot, so I feel like people of a certain age will find it familiar. It wasn't the most unique movie ever, but it definitely brought something new in its element of world building and the way Mandy Lane was as a character. Mandy Lane was very mysterious. I think I've said that like 8 million times. She was fairly unreadable, and her backstory wasn't really explained. Her motivations were fairly vague. You kind of had an idea. You could speculate like, oh, she's mad that they were mean to Emmett, or like, oh, she wants fame, or oh, she just wants to be popular and now she hates the popular kids because they're mean, or whatever. Her motivations were not clear, and I think some people won't like that. I think vagueness in movies can sometimes be detrimental. Mandy Lane's motivations were vague, but they were not so vague. Like, we were fed little grains of what might be her motivation, and so there is enough there to speculate that I think it feeds the imagination rather than leaving us bereft and questioning. If I had to rate this movie, I would give it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. It was just a really high quality movie that was very atmosphere rich and really pulled me in, and I really enjoyed it. The premise is really solid and familiar, and the teenager actors were good looking for the most part, and I really liked the soundtrack. It was just an enjoyable time. Critical reception for this movie is super mixed, with some people finding it lame, ununique, and just kind of boring and flawed, while other people were like, oh, this is so revolutionary and it breathes life into an old genre. I really enjoyed it. I guess some people won't, since it's such a mixed review, but I really liked it. I loved it, in fact. It's not the best movie I've ever seen, so I can't give it a 5 out of 5 stars, and it's definitely not a unique concept, but everything about it that made it special was in the execution of this film, which I really enjoyed. I loved it, but I would love to hear what you have to say. Do you feel differently? Do you hate it? Do you love it? Let me know. Thank you so much for watching this review. I hope that it was helpful to you, and I hope you enjoyed it. Please consider liking this video, and if you like horror reviews, and if you like me, please subscribe. I make horror movie reviews on this channel, so there you go. Thank you so much, and have a great day. Bye.